This is Aer Dogs, a podcast series on the aviation industry that will take you from the boardroom to the boarding gates. In this episode of Aer Dogs, we're mixing things up. Have a listen to Dec Ryan being interviewed by Ellen James. We'll take you on a whistle-stop tour of the airlines, how Dec hires his rock stars, and his thoughts on aviation.
Welcome to Aer Dogs. Today, you are being hosted by me, Ellen James from Islandia. And in the hot seat today is Dr. Dec Ryan, the founder and executive chairman of Islandia. Dec, how does it feel to be on the other side of the table?
Unusual, and I'm delighted you're doing it. It shows what we're trying to do with the podcast. We're trying to be casual and efficient and different. So isn't it great? Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to start with what is your favourite question to ask everybody. So when did you become an aerosexual?
I'm not sure I'm an aerosexual. And the reason I'm saying that is most of our guests can plug in and they go, I was 13, I went to Heathrow, or I lived beside the airport, or whatever the reason they got into aviation. My dad was in Aer Lingus for 17 years. So we just flew around the world following him, as you do. And kind of interested in it, but he worked so hard, I was kind of saying to myself, I'm not too sure I'll do that. One thing did change after college, when I finished college in the early 80s. I went to work with an airline that doesn't exist anymore, called America West Airlines in Phoenix, Arizona. And one of the jobs I did there was, they call them dispatchers, or in Europe I think it's the red caps. It's the person in charge of getting the airplane out on time. And I love that job because you could tell the pilots they're idiots and, push them on. You could tell the fuel guys to move it. You were actually in charge of that airplane, and the power was incredible. But the fun of it, and particularly if let's say the turnaround times was 25 minutes, which is normal for most low-cost carriers. Sometimes we got an airplane in with only 20 minutes to go, and we turned it around, and that was like brilliant. So I may be half an aerosexual. Half.
The better half.
Yeah. No, we'll need somebody good with words to come up with a phrase for being half.
I want to ask as well, which airline CEO or aviator would you like to go for a beer with, and why?
So most people on this question to date normally have picked people who passed, and I get all that. And if it was in the past or somebody who's passed, it'd certainly be Herb Kelleher. Today, I'm not sure. Most people think it would be Michael. I've had loads of dinners with him. We're sick of each other.
And breakfasts and pints.
Yeah, and school and everything. Yeah, exactly. I'd be intrigued, and let's check her name later on, please. The new lady who's in charge of Japanese Airlines, JAL. And she was a hostess, and she made it all her way through. And there's not enough women in the industry, as we know, and we're trying to do something about that. We'd actually might, at a later date, talk about the event that's coming up in November.
Sure.
But to be a woman in Japan and a CEO is some achievement. So I would hope she'd be a bit of fun. Maybe we could do karaoke afterwards together. And I don't want to be stereotyping Asians and karaoke, but I'd love to hear her story.
Yeah.
I forgot about that question, by the way. I thought it was prepared.
Can redo if you need to. I want to move on as well to your career. So we're going to do a bit of a dive from the beginning right the way through to the present day. So with Islandia, You've owned a string of airlines, most notably Ryanair. Obviously, Ryanair was started by the Ryan family. What was it like to work with your father?
Not nice. I've talked about him several times. He was an incredible taskmaster. I think he played on your loyalty. Mm-hmm. And you always wonder when that happens, Ellen, is it somebody really clever or are they controlling you? And I say that about all people who play on your loyalty or remind you of loyalty. It's a bit like a army general or something and saying, hop over the hill there and there's only 100 bullets coming at you. So I did a lot of that stuff. It was hard, but I think I said this in Olivia's podcast, Olivia Hunt's podcast, who has a really good podcast. I think it's called Wellness, but I should know that anyway. Anyway, I decided when he went 60 not to argue anymore. Mm-hmm. And he won a lot of arguments in about a year, and then he realized what I was doing. So,
why did you decide at 60? Why not 50?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I look back on that. He was trying to use the right words. Words are very important, particularly when you're talking about family. And I say this with great admiration, he was like a Jack Russell in the stable yard. Mm-hmm. And they were one of my favourite dogs, but they can't help themselves. Like you would say to a Jack Russell, leave the horse alone. And the dog would get it back in its corner. 30 seconds later, who's at the back of the horse? The Jack Russell. So sometimes people, it's in their DNA or they're made that way. Listen, I learned so much. I don't want to seem that I'm not appreciative. I'm very appreciative. It just becomes hard when it's your dad and you can't call him dad.
Yeah.
So it was difficult.
Yeah.
And listen, we were like the Bermuda Triangle. It was myself, Michael, and Tony, right? And, these famous Saturday morning meetings. Like, I thought I was a referee at one stage, like the two lads having goes at each other. And then I'd say something and then two of them have a go at me, So it was like a bad movie, but it really got you thinking, so.
Yeah. Do you think it shaped you a bit as
of course, yeah.
a leader?
Yeah. So this is a big debate I have with Stephen, who's our group MD, Stephen Maxwell, about can you teach leadership or is it kind of comes to you naturally? Stephen's not convinced. We're talking at school level. You can teach it. I'm 100% sure you can teach it. Genuinely, there's only one time in my life where I actually thought I was a leader. And I think there's a great phrase, Ellen, about people, our previous Minister for Finance, Lenihan, I think Brian was his first name. He got very sick when he was head of finance. And he worked through it all and then he passed, let's say, at the end of the project or whatever it was. And Ireland was in a mess. I get the sense that somebody like that is a reluctant leader. So I think some people love leading and are good at it, and some people are reluctant leaders. And so I would put myself in the latter category.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't think that's right. I think you're a good leader. I don't think you're a reluctant leader.
Well, the Christmas bonus is sorted out.
Yes!
Now. That was easy, wasn't it?
Episode done.
Yeah. Sorry, Stephen.
I want to now we'll move on to the next airline. So that was Tiger Airways, 2004. So an airline in Asia. Why did you go over to Asia?
Very simply, we were and this is Morris Mason, who's one of the Aer Dogs, and it was great seeing him.
Yoga dog.
Yoga dog, sorry. He would love that. And it was great seeing him last Thursday at the aviation event. Anyway, I know I'm not meant to refer to dates and all that kind of stuff, so I self-corrected there. It could be any last Thursday. But anyway, myself and Morris, around that time, were very close to doing a joint venture with Air Macau in Macau, which most people know as the island off Hong Kong. And the chairman at the time of Air Macau pretended he didn't speak English. So he didn't say anything for about 10 hours of the time we were with him. And one of our clauses was we would be their exclusive partners if it was successful and for the mainland. Mm-hmm. So I was arguing this point for about an hour, and his lieutenant kept on saying no. Then just literally out of nowhere, he says to us in perfect English, "That's not going to happen, guys."
Wow.
So we felt a bit rejected, not having a go at the people of Macau, but Chinese are brilliant negotiators. So we went down to Singapore with a similar idea, and they took it up and they loved it, and it was very successful.
Yeah.
But, we picked good partners.
And that was with Tony Davies as well.
Yeah, so we were Charlie Clifton and another dog, and Morris. Charlie was in Ryanair. Interviewed Tony in the UK. I'm pretty sure it was in Heathrow. And just thought Tony was the bee's knees. And he is.
He is. He's great.
Yeah. And he doesn't, this podcast was great, but he never gets the credit he deserves. Mm. And, he was really tested down there. Singapore is a hard place to live. And, when you go there, the number one thing people do at the weekend is go shopping. Right? So that becomes pretty, boring after a month or whatever, So it was a hard place to live. Everybody goes there and go, wow, and it's clean and you can't chew gum and it's perfect. But it's actually too clean and too perfect, So Tony did great.
Yeah. So Ryanair to Tiger. So we know obviously Ryanair got the name from the Ryan family.
Yeah.
How did Tiger get its name?
That's a great story, which Dec Ryan is still belly aching. Dec Ryan being one of my kids. We were having breakfast with Tony down in Kildare. Myself and Tony thought we were Einstein, and we kept on calling it. We thought Southeast would work to reflect being in Asia, but also after Southwest. Mm-hmm. Then out of nowhere, little Melt says, who's about 7 or 8, "How about Tiger?" So myself and Tony goes, "Thank God the next generation has brains." And Tony says to him, "I'll give you 20 euros. And by the way, that was a lot of money. Mm-hmm. "I'll give you 20 euros if you tell me 3 reasons why." And Jack says, "The golfer, the beer, and the animal." And he got the 20 euros. The Singaporeans, when I called them, Americans loved it. We loved it. Singaporeans objected because it's a nickname for dance clubs in Thailand.
Oh, wow.
So I rang Tony. I said, "There's a 4th reason, and thank God Jack doesn't know the reason." The reason Jack belly aches, and he's very good at belly aching on this point, is I made him split the money with his sibs.
Oh, wow.
So he says today that he invented one of the most well-known brands in Asia, and he got £5 for it.
25%.
Yeah.
That's not a bad ratio, though.
Yeah, but he'll never forget. And he did get paid. And I've checked with the lawyers.
Does he still have that €5?
No. I think it was. I think there was a Smith's Toys. We were going to Westport or Lewisburg. I think there was a Smith's Toys in Westport, and it got gobbled up. I probably put another £5 on for everybody. It's a great story.
It is, yeah.
And by the way, you've probably seen a bit of it, Ellen. It's not just a good name, but you can do so much with it. And the photograph of Tiger eating the 2 airlines in Australia.
Yeah.
That you can do so much with a tiger. And the girls were called Tiger Lilies. So it was just great name to play around with. Our fares were roaring, and
Oh, yeah.
So it was, yeah.
I think Jack earned his €20 then,
Yeah,
doesn't
he did, yeah. But Tony Davis is the one who really made it, just in case.
So after Tiger, that is circa 2005, Islandia then became involved with Allegiant. You work side by side with Maury Gallagher.
Yeah.
With Allegiant, what was your greatest achievement?
The investment. We made really serious returns out of it. Maury is a rock star. I was so glad that he recently accepted the Airlandia Award for Unsung Hero. I think I said it to you today. I'm worried about the unsung heroes because they're so humble.
They don't accept them.
They drive off in taxis and you have to go chase them down the road, which Maury did in Dublin. He's just a great guy, and he had a great team around him. And after we sold our stock, it went public in 2005. After we sold our stock, obviously we weren't involved anymore, but he had two other senior deputies, who was Andrew Levy and Ponder Harrison. They worked really well as a team, and Ponder left. And if you think of a triangle, if you take one of the angles away, it gets into trouble. So I'm kind of glad we divested when we did. But, I think it's just amazing the way the US... I wonder, I hadn't thought of this before, I wonder, is it that it's based in Vegas, so Wall Street kind of ignores it? Like, I think Wall Street ignores everything that's not on the West Coast or the East Coast, and everything in the middle is, not too important. Like, I don't want to be shot, particularly because I'm traveling to Chicago soon. But, and I grew up in Chicago, so I love the city.
I remember when I was speaking to Maury, and he was saying that with it being based in Las Vegas, you've got the airport so close by, you've got access to hundreds of thousands of hotel rooms, all within a mile from the airport.
Have you been?
No, never.
So please bring Andrew, and I would leave your little girl at home.
Okay.
Yeah. It's an adult's place, but the airport is genuinely about 5 minutes from the city. So you nearly feel like you're landing downtown. And it's just great fun. And by the way, brilliant place to have an airline. But everybody else thinks it would be a horrible place to have an airline. But it's actually the exact opposite.
Yeah, people are flying in for a weekend and flying out again.
What Maury does cleverly, and it's his own, he says, let's say he's launching Wichita to Vegas. And what they do is they launch the service about 6 months out. And they get a circus to go through the village. So they get tigers and clowns and Elvis, and everybody starts thinking about Vegas. And what happens with Vegas, it's a little bit like going away on holidays, but it's very clever. What happens if you and Andrew, when you and Andrew are going to Vegas, you start thinking about what you're going to do. And he'll look up and they say, Simple Minds are playing. They're my favorite group. Can we go? And you agree. But what you'll actually do is you'll spend a couple of $100 without even thinking about it before you even get there.
Yeah.
And invariably you're buying it on the Allegiant. So it's just so clever. You know? But you know how highly I think of Maury. He's just great. I could learn a lot from his humility.
So following Allegiant, that's when you entered into the Latin America.
Yeah.
So we started with Viva Aerobus in 2006, followed by Viva Air.
Yeah.
So why did you choose to go into Latin America?
I know this sounds very funny, but the real story is it was Tony's... it was around his 59th birthday. It wasn't a big one, but it was around that time. And I was in New York, and he was down in the Pacific side of Mexico, a place called Correas, which is very, very pretty. And he called me and said, would I come down? Mm-hmm. So this story goes on, by the way, but I fly down to Puerto Vallarta, and it's about an hour in the cab. And the guy has perfect English. And I say to him, I'm always wondering when I go to places, would a low-cost airline work? And I said to the guy, how do you buy an airfare? And he burst out laughing. He said, that's very easy. I said, how? He said, well, my brother, Juan, lives in LA, and I'll text him and I'll ask him to buy the flights. And then he makes a little joke and says, I hope that Juan will pay for it as well and send him down. And that's invariably. So what the kind of the communication style in Mexico at that time was all texting. Mm-hmm. And I went, it could work. So the story goes on, right? So I stay with Tony for 3 days and then fly back to Dublin. And so that was the beginning of February. And Jack's, he's coming up again. Mm-hmm. Jack's birthday is 26th of February. And Tony's down in Kildare. And we're doing it kind of like a burger dinner for Jack in one of the places. And I ring Tony and I said, Jack's birthday, will you put your head in? And he goes, I'm just feeling a bit tired, right? And I said, can I remind you of something? And he said, yeah, go ahead. I traveled about 4,000 miles for your birthday. You won't travel 40 miles for Jack's. Mm. And he put down the phone, he didn't say anything. And then he arrives into the restaurant. And you know what he says to Jack? I wouldn't miss this for the world. I could have strung him up, but it was a great turnaround.
Gun to his head and
yeah. And Jack was saying, I can't believe my granddad came. I said, if you only knew the real... Okay. And then Viva. Can I move on to Viva?
Of course. Let's go on to Viva.
Yeah, so Viva... Sorry, I'm doing a listening course soon, as you know.
I was just going to say, we'll move on to Viva, and perhaps you can tell us about the impact of low-cost airlines in Colombia.
Thanks. It's probably one of the best examples, and we also need you to ask me a question about listening courses, okay? Colombia is twice the size of France, 50 million people, and from Medellin to Bogota, which is the biggest domestic route, it's 9 hours by car and 35 minutes by flight. Now, a lot of people prejudge the Colombians because of history and drugs and so on. They're really good engineers because you have to be because of the topography and the weather they get. So if anybody's out there being smart and saying, well, the roads are shite, it's not that. It's the topography. And they get serious rain, and serious rain can, crack open roads and all that kind of stuff. So it was just logical for us to go in there. Avianca, who I'm now a shareholder in, brilliant company now, not brilliant when we were competing with them. They just totally underestimated Viva, and we did a really clever thing. I think the most clever thing we did, Ellen, was we put out a tender between the city of Cali and Medellin for the airline to be based, and Medellin won by a mile. In fact, the Cali guys, and I hope they're still listening, is they just were so, I don't know the right word, nonchalant. They were just so blasé about the thing. Mm-hmm. And there was a girl, she loved me calling her girl. There was a lady running, and I hope she still is, called Sarah, and she was running Airplan, who owned Medellin, and they got it. And Cali used to be the second city in Colombia after Bogota. Now Medellin is, and I'm not saying it's all because of Viva, but a big factor of it was Viva. Listening courses. So as you know, I'm giving you a bit of brain damage about us doing a listening course. Can I recommend to everybody to do it? It doesn't have anything to do with business, but we did it so we did it. When did Lou say we did it?
2016.
Okay. So it's not as long ago as I thought it was. Can I just recommend to people to do it? And there was 8 of us, and it was equally split between men and women. And everything you thought a woman would say, the guy said, and everything you thought men would say. So totally opposite views. Mm-hmm. And just as an example, the girls focused on body language. The guys just didn't even notice it. And by the way, in some ways, that can make you a better listener, because if you're focusing on somebody's body language, anyway, That's my little advertisement for.
Done.
But and my kids joke that I obviously skipped that day and didn't do the course because I'm not a very good listener. But it's it's fascinating.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Yeah.
What do you think is next for aviation?
At the conference, which is the annual conference that AIB, Irlandia, and UCC do, University College Cork do. We're in our second year, and it's become very successful. I'm really delighted to say that it's become so successful. I kind of had a bit of a go about SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. It was kind of funny. Nobody disagreed with me. And as you know from being at it, it wasn't a group of wallflowers. It was Michael, Willie, Connor, Maury, myself. I don't think any of us agreed on any points, you know, but so I was really expecting people to have a right go at me about that. But so to answer your question, I think it's electric aviation. We're doing huge amount of works on that research and so on. It's part of the reason I'm going to the States next week. Stephen's leading that, as he does on many things. And it's really exciting. But I think the thing I have to get my head around, Ellen, and I presume you heard it in the office, was this is the first time you're setting up an airline and you have to actually focus on where you're going to get your energy from. You know, doing an airline today, all the airports have Jet A1, but not all airports have a grid beside them or supply to electricity. So it's very interesting. And I think we will probably do it somewhere in Scandinavia.
Yeah?
Scandinavia or France, yeah.
How many years do you think it will take?
It's a really good question. I think people, and in particular, so the US military are using it a lot. And most of the time it's unmanned aircraft. That's great on the basis of, I'm not going to make comments about pilots, but it's great on the basis of them not losing human beings. And, you know, that's the thing that most militaries around the world don't want to do. They don't want to lose their people.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at there is, if you look at the history of technology, internet's a good example. Once you give it to the army or the Air Force or whoever, the Navy, they kick the living daylights out of the technology. And then when it gets to humans or people, it's in really good shape. So that process is going on at the moment. Certainly cargo and passengers will happen probably 2026.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's, you know, and you know this from being a good listener in the office, that a lot of the companies involved in making the OEMs, as we call them, the factories, nobody's certified one yet. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's somebody kind of like knocking on your door. I won't say what county you live in, but knocking on your door and saying, we bake bread and we can deliver every Saturday morning to you. And it's a bit like people not knowing how to get health and safety check on the bread. So nobody has certified these yet. But the good thing is the military don't need certification. So they put the aircraft through the ringer, which is great. So 2026, and the history of aviation, which you probably know well, not just because of yourself, but also your dad, is that by and large, the aircraft from start are small and don't go far. And then they learn how to elongate it and make it go further. So I think it'll be on a real commercial basis probably at the end of this decade.
That's very exciting. Now, you've mentioned the office a few times as well. So in Islandia, we are only a small team of people, less than 10 of us.
Yeah.
What I find really interesting, Dec, is you are very good at interviewing and finding the rock stars to be part of your team. What is it about someone when you're interviewing them that you know you have the rock star you want sitting in front of you? Well,
a couple of things, and I want to mention Natty, who Natty, who just got another job, and we're delighted for her. But she was with us about 5 years.
Yeah, I think it was 5 years.
She says I interviewed her in 30 seconds. She's not being nice. I think it was a couple of minutes, but it wasn't 30 seconds. But she said, and I told her she had the job. So first of all, you have to realize that selecting somebody, I think people take too long with selection.
Mm-hmm.
And the critical thing is the first 6 months. When's your probation, by the way?
It finished a year and a half ago.
Okay, good. See, I am a good listener. So by the time people get to me, Ellen, they've been put through the ringer by Stephen or Connor or Lou or Aoife or any of the crew in the office, Michael. I think I named everybody.
I think you did. Well done.
Yeah. So you have to assume that they're good because they're coming in to see you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I remember once we were interviewing a girl, and this has nothing to do about women, but I notice it more on women. Women, when they blush, their neck gets kind of red. It looks like a rash sometimes. Not all women get it, but this woman, before I even sat down, had the rash on her neck. So I knew straight away she was bricking it, or whatever the right phrase should be. Nervous. Yeah, sorry. I got the word. We'll delete the word bricking later. So I went straight to her hobbies. And she was a really serious surfer. And you wouldn't have known that she was, dressed conservatively. Her hair was perfect. So you didn't have this image of her coming out of the sea, after being in a tumble dryer for an hour or two, And then she went off. And I mean, I couldn't stop her talking. And I learnt that a long time ago. We say, I don't know if they still say it, but Ryanair says, give us the people with the right raw material, and we'll make them into a great pilot or a great cabin attendant or a great engineer. And I actually think that. I had one interview once, and the guy, this was out in Ryanair, and he kept on asking me what time they start work and finish work. So I got pissed off with him, and I said, we start at 8 o'clock Japanese time, and we finish at 10 o'clock Californian time. And he looks at me, that's nearly 24 hours. I said, well, that's it. And he obviously didn't get the job.
He was good at maths, though.
Yeah, he was, yeah. Or he didn't listen either. Okay, I'll stop the listening bit.
I'm going to finish on what could be a controversial question for you, Dec. Who is your favourite airline and why?
I answered this recently, and I was really surprised with the answer. It's actually Aer Lingus.
Yeah?
Yeah, and a lot of people think I'm blowing whatever up their backsides and so on. The more I think about that answer, obviously, the first probably 14 years, Tony was in Aer Lingus. Yeah, around 14 years of my life was Aer Lingus. And in those days, it was very prestige. And let's say Tony was duty manager in JFK, which was a big job. On Paddy's Day, the Aer Lingus team held the party. And I remember Mom going around, it was in our house. I remember Mom going around like a devil in the house, or whatever female devil should be called, a witch maybe. And it was nothing to do with her. She was just so planking, getting it right, and people coming to her house and the boss's wife and all that kind of stuff. So there's a kind of nice warm feeling about Aer Lingus. I swam for them, which they would be sick to hear that I was on one of their teams. So the other thing of it is when you get a good crew in Aer Lingus, it's fantastic. And they'll just give you a little nudge and they'll say, are you bothered with the dinner? But not slagging, real professional, but warm.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm in Dublin when I get on an airplane in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not all airlines can replicate that. I'm sure if you're Japanese, you feel that, or German with Lufthansa and so on. So it's Aer Lingus. There's others I admire, but for different reasons. But every time I'm on an Aer Lingus flight, it's just comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because you're coming home. Back to us in the office.
Now I know.
Now, Dec, I want to talk as well about something that
You love the power on this, don't you?
I absolutely love the power.
Shut your mouth.
I get to tell you what to do, Dec,
Great.
and I am enjoying
sorry,
this.
that doesn't change.
That's true.
That's going to be the same thing tomorrow morning. Okay, go on.
So the One Foundation.
Yeah.
That is your charity that
Yeah.
you have funded for a number of years now. When it comes to donating some of your money to an organisation, what do you specifically look for?
Okay, good question. So just a little bit of background. We set it up in 2003, closed it in 2013, which was a part of the plan. Mm-hmm. We had 10 people working in it at one stage, including some really brilliant people like Sean Coughlin and reluctantly, I have to also say, Owen Stack. But those guys were excellent, and we had other people in there as well. I think imagination is the most important thing. We funded Belong To, which was run by Michael Barron. Mm. It was the only business case that we didn't have to do anything with. That's how good it was. And like, this has nothing to do with sexuality, but if you had said to me at the start of the process, we were going to be the main funder behind a group that helps people with their sexuality, I don't know if I would have saw that coming. Mm-hmm. But he's a rock star. He's amazing. And I'll always remember when I first met him, and now he's a really good friend. I adore Michael. He was telling me about a kid who came down. They used to have meetings on a Sunday and kind of like little work groups and so on. So if you were gay from any part of Ireland, you would come up on the Sunday to attend this because the facilities weren't in Sligo or in Tipperary or whatever. Anyway, a kid came from Donegal and he just told me the whole story. And like Donegal, as you know, you go up there and you love it. It's a long way away. Mm. And to do it, day trip, and you're 14 and you're worried about your sexuality. I just went, that's cool. And by the way, probably one of my most proudest days of being an Irishman was when I call it the same sex, when that referendum was passed. Mm. And I think we had 70% of the country voted in favour of it.
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen. I love I'll finish. RTE were doing a kind of vox pop thing, going around to people asking why you voted and how you voted. And they went to a grandmother, I think in Sligo, and they said to her, why did you vote? How did you vote? And she said, I voted yes. And, it was obvious, she was not young, but she had, and they said, why did you vote yes? And she said, my grandson. And the reporter was trying to get around this and going like, well, don't you believe in the issues? And, do you think it's, they were trying to knuckle down on the reason. She said, I'm not too sure you were listening. I did it for my grandson. And I just love that.
That's so good.
Yeah. And you know what? In my mind, and maybe I'm romanticizing it, she may have not agreed with the issue. Mm. But if it's for young Seamus or...
future generations.
Yeah. So it's great, the One Foundation.
What's next for the One Foundation?
At the moment, we're doing a lot of work on refugees, and I get very upset when I see some of the stuff that's happening in Ireland as well as Europe. Mm-hmm. I don't want to isolate Ireland. As you know, and you're involved with it as well, we're trying to come up with a campaign or ideas for loneliness. And, what is it? I think they call him the DG, the head of the medical FDA in the States. I think they call him Chief Medical Officer, came out last year and said, loneliness is a crisis happening in the world, and it's the equivalent of 13 cigarettes a day.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal statistic.
Yeah.
Well, Dec, thank you so much for your time today and letting me pick your brain. It's been enlightening. Thank you.
Thanks, Owen.
You've been listening to Aer Dogs, brought to you by Irlandia Aviation and in conjunction with the Aer Dogs book by Tom Lyons. If you enjoyed listening to this interview, please subscribe or leave a rating or review wherever you get your podcasts.